Through his foundation, Bill Gates has helped to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Well, today at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, he announced that his project called CEPI, or the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, has $460 million. He sat down with CBS News to talk about how that money will go to preparing for the next great epidemic.
The idea is to take a new way of building vaccines that could let us develop in less than a year a novel vaccine. They're called DNA RNA vaccines, and so we'll fund a few projects to build specific vaccines, but not only will we get that, we'll prove out that these platforms can work, we'll understand the regulatory issues, and it gives us a chance of being able to respond in time when the next epidemic hits.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial. It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth. It also comes with significant risks and uncertainties.
Things like mass famine, mass flooding, drought, of kinds that will affect very large populations.
It could weaken monsoons in India, China, and Africa enough to affect crops. It could eradicate blue sky.
You start increasing the amount of diffuse light and you have less direct light, which is the same thing as saying it looks hazy and white.
It's an all-out effort, you know, like a world war, but it's us against greenhouse gases. So it's a fitting moment to reflect on the progress we're making towards financing the Sustainable Development Goals. The largest source of additional financing for the SDGs will have to come from increases in tax revenue.
My name is Michelle Eggert, and I'm the CEO of Biomilk. Here at Biomilk, we're creating cultured breast milk outside of the body. We're able to provide our product with the nutrition of breast milk, but the practicality of formula. We are able to use our proprietary technology to create breast milk outside of the body, just in the way it's produced in the body, by harnessing the evolution of human mammary epithelial cells.
Well, yes, your carbon footprint will go down dramatically if you don't eat meat, but one way to do that is to be a customer some portion of the time of these new ways of making ground beef that people like Beyond and Impossible and others are bringing out.
I'm Dakota Gruner. I'm the executive director of ID 2020.
I grew up in Berkeley, went to Brown for college where I studied biology and political science. Went and did a stint in management consulting where luckily I ended up doing work mostly for the Gates Foundation, so it tied directly into what I was interested in doing.
In 1998, Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control.
Unfortunately, the current vaccines are good enough that if we just keep taking those, then at least in terms of severe disease and death, you have very good protection. I'd hope the duration would be longer, but the data coming out says that if you're older, it's not good enough. You need to keep revaccinating. It's not good enough. You need to keep revaccinating.
Racism, sexism, misogyny, all of that, homophobia, xenophobia, we connect it to Donald Trump, but it existed before Donald Trump. Fox News was racist before coronavirus. They are racist during the coronavirus. Fox News will be racist after the coronavirus. Racism was here before Donald Trump, and sadly, it will be here after Donald Trump. If it walks like a racist, talks like a racist, acts like a racist, it is a racist. And we have a racist president in the White House who really pushes his racism like a peacock. Donald Trump is the first president to have purposefully has made racism the center of his campaign, of his administration, clearly. I think Donald Trump wants to get rid of legal immigration, and it's because of people who come from brown and black countries. He might do away with DACA, which is another moral line that he would be crossing, which is something that would be advancing a white supremacy agenda. Donald Trump was a white supremacist in 2011 when he decided to be the grand wizard of the birther movement. Birtherism, which is inherently racist. They want to put up these awful voter registration, voter suppression laws, which is racism, to make it difficult for people of color to vote. And voter suppression is racism. That's exactly what it is. Xenophobia and racism has always played a role in outbreaks. If you look at SARS, if you look at Ebola, if you look at yellow fever or Spanish flu, we've been talking about the coronavirus and how it is an epidemic in this country, which is true. But another epidemic in this country is racism. Remember George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many lives, black lives that were lost last year because of violence, because of racism, because of, white supremacy. Can we kind of dispel this whole idea that the Tea Party was about the deficit when clearly that is not true? What it was about was a reactionary to the racism in America that we were seeing at the time. And what are we going to do to actually start the process? Because it's going to take some time to uproot systemic racism. We have to continue to call out this racism. We cannot stop not doing that.
We are back, and it feels so good to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for missing last week. That's on me because of attending a conference in Louisiana. The Crusader Congress. It was a great time, but things got real crazy, and I apologize. But we are back, and we at least cobbled together three of us to bring you the news. Oh, we brought four. There's John, right on time, perfectly. I timed it that way, even though I didn't. But we got a bunch of stuff to talk about this week. We have stuff to talk about from last week as well, and I am joined with my fellow pewers. I don't think that's the right way we're going to go with, but Steve Cunningham, Ryan Grant, and Jonathan, who just showed up at the buzzer. Glad to see you all. The artist formerly known as Floz is not here. I mean, he had like a kid and stuff, and he put out another great track. You should check it out on Instagram. He put out a pro-life track. Once again, it's fantastic. So go follow Fawaz on Instagram and listen to the song, because his songs are great. But unfortunately, he is not with us today, and I'm sure he'll be back later or next week. But let's get right into it. We're going to try and catch up on a bunch of stuff, but we'll talk about the first news item this week, which has kind of dominated the coverage. It's going to be the run that is over for the Disinformation Board, which is not a great way to put it. The premature end to the Ministry of Truth and everybody's favorite punching bag, Miss Scary Poppins, who is now a victim of misogyny and which ironically enough, misinformation, taking down the Disinformation Board. But the fact of the matter is the Disinformation Board was only a setup. It was the first time. The fact that it was based on pride with the Biden regime, they announced it. They were proud of it. They didn't think there was going to be any pushback because these people in DC are foolish. But now there was pushback. They're shutting the board down. I think Jankowicz is going to be on an off-Broadway play of how her life is terrible. I don't know if you caught her singing 6 or 7 different times. But the idea of the Ministry of Truth is not going away. So we're going to throw it to our own man in hiding, Steve Cunningham, first, to see what he has to his thoughts on the Disinformation Board, the shutting down of the Disinformation Board, and where he thinks it will pop up, because it's not going away. It's going to be like it'll pop up somewhere else in the federal government. Steve, what do you think?
Let me get our boy Peter Ducey on for first opening thoughts on it.
Excellent.
Mischaracterized, then the Disinformation Board is being shut down because of disinformation? Is that what's happening here?
Look, I mean, the board was put forth for a purpose, right? To make sure that we really did address what was happening across the country when it came to disinformation. It's all, but no, it's just going. It's going to pause. There's been a mischaracterizations from outside forces, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to
outside forces.
We're going to do an assessment, but the work doesn't stop. We're still going to continue the work. The DHS is still going to continue the work.
That's a very yellow shirt.
I was thinking that too. Kind of was it the
that is a very yellow shirt.
Curious George-ish. The woman in the yellow shirt.
Yes.
No, you're right. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to be rebranded or refixed. They saw the problem. It's kind of like running a defense and an offense. You see what the other team's going to do, and you plan accordingly against it. As Ryan and I have talked about ad nauseum for over a year now, the I-911's coming. They're going to make you have a license to get online. They've talked about this before. You have to have a your digital ID to do that already in certain countries overseas on the other side of the globe. That's all coming down the pipe. The WHO new pandemic board. It's all connected.
Monkeypox.
I'm sorry.
Monkeypox.
Monkeypox. Yeah, I actually have a monkeypox video of that. Yeah, I mean, the germ group. I mean, if you haven't seen what's happened in the last 2 years, and this is kind of shocking, all right, you can say, yeah, we won a little bit. Kind of like Elon. Everyone's going to say, oh, yeah, we won. Woohoo. No, it's going to come back and bite us in the you-know-what down the road. Sure, grab a victory right now, but, I mean, this is just going to they're going to try it again. These guys do not, how would you say, quit just because a few guys online. All right, sure. Fox went after it a little bit. A couple other guys in alternative media went after it hardcore. They don't care about that. So it's almost like kind of like Australia at the beginning of it when they did the no jab, no job, floating a trial balloon out. In a sense, seeing how they get a feel of what's going on, what people don't like, what they're going to do, and then change it all up for down the road. As she said, they're still going to come down with it. So and what's her face isn't fired. She's still on the board. There was an article about that, so she resigned, and then they begged her to come back to stay on because they love her that much. So she's still in it. They're still going to get paid the money for it. Health and DHS is doing it. They haven't gotten rid of the program. So yeah, it's just kind of like keep an eye on it for later. Probably about 2-3 months down the road, it'll come back in another version 2.0 type deal. maybe they'll get Gates on board. I don't know. But yeah, it's not close to being over.
The idea with the disinformation board is a lot like the fight of critical race theory in the education sector. People think that getting rid of CRT in name means it's gone. No, if you've ever been around teachers, I was one for 10 years, they're going to take it and bury it in educationalese, and they're going to bury it in a place that you'll never find it, like in phys ed. And
just what you mentioned on that, if you saw Cheryl Atkinson the last couple of days on Project Veritas, she mentioned that the FBI wanted to plant porn on her husband's computer. They were tracking all these guys. They were tracking her. They were tracking all these other, well, not celebrities, but people in the media. So if you're getting tracked in the media like this by the feds, what do you think you and I and us outside of the Home Depot, you say we're hanging out in front of, or the Waffle House or whatever it is, that's easily. I mean, they're tracking this. We know this all over the place. Yep. When I was doing Uber, I remember telling a guy in the back, hey, where are you going? I was taking him to the airport. He goes, Chicago. And sure as anything, every time we did that, Chicago would play on Pandora.
Wow.
I remember Mike Church being in the car one time talking about keto diet. I still get keto junk mails because of him, because of that day. It's the smart grid, everything going in. We think it's all cool. Hey, we got smart TV. Or there's what's his face, Governor Petraeus said that the dishwasher is listening.
Internet of Things.
Yep. So Ryan, the idea of I would like you to approach it from the hubris that the federal government had and essentially announcing it and feeling that Americans have been programmed enough that they were just going to be like, oh, this is a great idea. I think that, there has been. Of course, now most Democrats are going to be fine and on board with this because they think everything's disinformation. But the fact that they are that close, I want you to start on that, and then you can expound your thoughts on this whole fiasco.
Right. Well, the hubris in the whole business is I'm still undecided whether it was more, they knew they'd get pushback and to kind of examine how much they would get. Or whether they really were that stupid to think everyone's just going to accept it. Everyone's going to love this gal. And Nina Jankowicz, by the way, was also working on President Zelensky's campaign over in Ukraine. So she is part of the establishment. I'm not sure when she became part of the establishment. Several years ago. She
got her master's at Georgetown.
Yeah, there's a video of her singing in some little stand-up routine. And then during the course of her little song and dance, which wasn't that good, she's complaining Barbara Streisand's rich and famous. Why aren't I rich and famous? Who do I have to do the horizontal mumbo with to become rich and famous? I've got that video clip, but I wouldn't want to play it because she uses a lot of bad language in there. And obviously, somebody on Team Evil took one for the team and brought her on to become rich and famous. I don't know. But the reality is, she's not, going to go away, even though, so that failed fantastically. Because it wasn't just conservatives or whatever they want to demonize as alt-right. It was a wide spectrum of people, religious, not religious, conservative, hardcore libertarian, anarchist, anarcho-libertarians, or people like us, like a lot of Catholics. Also, a lot of people on the left-leaning libertarians, social libertarians. And even various Democrats that are just kind of, wait a minute, this is just a little too much. And so the pushback was pretty universal. It wasn't just because otherwise they would play that into, see the right, they're all supporting Russian disinformation, or whatever the latest line is to play on that. But it was so the pushback was so universal that they really had to pull it back. And that's, of course, what the strong, diverse female press secretary is, hinted at, that forces from the outside, as in the entire public, that says, no, we don't want the Ministry of Truth in here. So, and the fact that became the common line, it was called, everyone linking it right back to Orwell, right there shows that, people saw right through it. So they say, okay, we need to come at this in another way. So it's not going away. You didn't beat it. You just beat it for now. But like Steve said, whenever they bring in your iPatriot Act or whatever, it will be an intrinsic part of whatever management they bring in. And it'll be probably something like in reaction to a terrorist event, that the FBI has this marvelous role in that nobody will be allowed to talk about, or whatever. It'll be in reaction to this. Then we need to have an official organ to tell you the truth, and not this disinformation. You can only listen to us, even when we're wrong. So that's ultimately what you're going to get.
Well, what you're seeing now is Governor Hateful Kate in New York has signed executive orders yesterday to combat hate speech, and we'll talk about it a little bit more with the Buffalo shooting, because what you're talking about, Buffalo incident, all the stuff you just mentioned right now, right there, is starting to play out as a result of the incident in Buffalo this week, which we'll get to in a moment. But Jonathan, this woman, Nina Jankowicz, who I don't know how much you've seen of her. I don't know how many video clips you've seen of her, but everything she got out there was just pretty much the epitome of a spoiled, awful Gen Z, millennial, whatever you want to classify her, modern American woman. And just the disdain she had for the public. She really was, if you're going to go along the lines that this was a setup, she was the perfect figurehead to use, because she was just so unlikable. What are your thoughts on the whole Ministry of Truth thing? If you want to expound on the point I just made, what do you think?
And I think you nailed it there just a second ago. She was so despicable. She was perfect. The Ministry of Truth. Let me back up 2 steps. There are a lot on the left who are just so stupid that we can't even fathom their stupidity. We really can't. It would take us a long time to really dive into those depths. But I mean, these are this is a group of people who are following lockstep behind Satan, who is a brilliant creature as is. Sin makes us human beings stupid, but Satan has a one-track mind, so to speak, one-track intellect in trying to lead us to hell. And so there is a diabolical brilliance to it all. And I think you hit on it when you were looking for talking about having a fall person together with, and I say person there to just make sure I'm including the men and the women there, using the modern lingo.
That was very well done. Very well done.
She's perfect. Biden's perfect to be a fall man, because I think this didn't escape the folks who are actually the movers and shakers of all this. They are repulsive. Nobody. The one thing we can actually give to Obama is that he didn't like Biden, and I mean, who does like Biden? Who has liked Biden since he was a credit card shrill from Delaware? No one. So that's actually diabolically brilliant on their part to have, and then even like the Ministry of Truth, to have something they knew, because coming from the standpoint of psychology, they're not dumb. That is the actual movers and shakers. They knew that the very words would set us off, or would set the Tucker Carlsons off, the few people in the limelight who are willing to say, this is obviously a bad idea. This is the common phrase, a replay of something from 1984, A Brave New World, or Hunger Games. Pick your poison. They knew that, and so yes, it's bad. Amen to everything else that you've said and that Ryan said. And I think Ryan kind of hinted at this. My biggest concern then is what's behind this, and it's what Steve says all the time. What are they covering up with this little show right here? So that's what's on my mind. I see it and I recognize it for the ridiculousness that it is, but then I wonder, what have I not seen yet? What is Corbett going to break to us next week about what's actually behind all this? So that's kind of where how I'm looking at it.
No, it is interesting if you because everybody's interested in short-term victories. Like, oh yeah, and the problem is, and we can kind of talk about this next, is that you're hearing from people like Clay Travis and Buck Sexton and people from mainstream conservative outlets. I'm not calling them conservative, but they're from supposedly conservative outlets, talking about the wins that we are supposedly stacking up. Did we covered Roe, right? We were on that week when the leak was done, starting with Roe, and then apparently Elon being interested in Twitter, and now the Disinformation Board. It really feels like for short-term Americans, and we have the average American has the attention span of a goldfish. The short-term wins are designed to keep us sedated and to use it as a pressure valve to get out of this anger, which I think the 2022 elections will be anyway. I think they'll let the Republicans take the House and the Senate because A, they don't do anything, and B, it'll make people feel better, even though gas and food and all this other stuff is kind of going out of the way. They'll let them have it because it won't mean anything in the long run because everything comes out of the Oval Office. Speaking of the Oval Office, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on anything I just said there.
Can I say? Can I just say one quick thing?
Steve, John, go.
I think you're right about these so-called these really Pyrrhic small victories. That means we're not actually getting anywhere in these Pyrrhic victories. But I was watching a nearly unbearable to watch. As good a man as he is, Clarence Thomas, because he talks in this way that it's very easy to put you to sleep, and that's what happened. That's why I was late. Actually, is that I had fallen asleep. I was just so exhausted. But he's such a good man, and he nailed it. It was a brief clip, and it may have been from C-SPAN. I can't remember exactly, but where he's talking about the damage that the intimidation of the Supreme Court justices is to the republic. And if there's anything worth salvaging in the American system, it's at least the putative threefold setup, so that there's this balance of powers that I think from the human standpoint could restrain some of the extremes of government, the way that it would normally abuse the true, the good, and the beautiful, and get rid of it. Clarence Thomas, he made a good comment. He said it's things like that intimidation of the Supreme Court justices that they didn't even have to do anything. It's just to be outside, screaming outside their houses. They didn't have to actually make any violent action of any sort. But he said that's the sort of thing that changes institutions right there. And I was like, well, it took him a while to get to the point, and he said it in a way that put me to sleep, but he nailed it. That's the sort of thing that changes the way institutions like that work, or even somewhat sober people on the Supreme Court. If there's, let's say, 5 of them that are worth keeping on there, I think you hit it.
And that clip is actually on Clown Planet yesterday. If you can not fall asleep at the beginning, because it's like this is one of the opening clips. But also, Jonathan brought up Obama. The Biden's actual boss right now.
Yeah.
A couple days before this office was started, Obama's out there calling for an office to censor people. And then look at you. You mentioned about the wins. How many people today are upset of you calling out the gas prices? I was talking to the guy at the gym, the guy that owns it, the other day, and we were talking about this, going, man, how could people are going? It's back to $4. It's cheap. It's that whole frog in the water, boiling water idea thing. Oh, it was $4.40 or $4.30. Now it's $4. Oh, we're going. It's cheap now. It's $3.80. Yay! It'll never go back down to $2 or $1 again in your life. Probably might go up to $5 or $6 by the time Memorial Day hits.
Oh no, dude! It's going to be at $8.
$8, yeah. There's an actual.
It's $4.25 where I live, and yeah. I'm in supposedly a state that has access, even though we wouldn't do it. It's $4.25 where I live right now. It's going to be up to $8 by the middle of July.
It's $4.80 where I live, and diesel's pushing $5.70, and of course I've got a diesel van, so that's not a good sign, and that diesel beggars the imagination anyway, because you have to make diesel to make gasoline. So why is and they're artificially restricting that supply, because so many of the goods that travel in this country do so by truck, by diesel. And the more expensive you can make those, the more you can start driving toward that great reset. Less purchases for small businesses that rely on shipping that stuff around the country. The more everything goes up, the more as the money inflates, and so on and so forth. So it's more that squeezing the populace right to where you're going to get your ration card, which is going to be part of a biometric ID, which look, I guess you can't get any food unless you do this. And then, of course, when the scamdemic stuff comes in the next time, that'll be, oh, well, you haven't got the recommended medical treatments, whatever those will be. I don't think it takes much of a crystal ball to know what those are going to be. Therefore, your ration card shut off. You're not going to get food this month.
So look at the fact that...
And Iran just did that.
Yep.
Ice Age Farmer has a video on that. I ran, literally just did everything what Ryan just was talking about. You can't get food now in Iran without a digital ID.
Well, they're setting you up with the food. I don't have children, but I know you got all three of you gentlemen have little ones. I don't know if any of you guys are experiencing. I know Fwaz just let us know that he's having his baby baptized tomorrow, so that's why he's not here.
One less pagan.
Yeah, blessing to that. Get him out of that pagan state. But the idea, look at the baby formula shortage. Look what's happening now with that. If Breitbart had a great article. If you live in El Paso, you can't get access to baby formula. You're driving to Juarez where you can get shot up for any old reason. But the Walmarts and stuff, they got tons of formula there. They got all kinds of food there. And they're setting you up to get used to food shortages through baby formula right now, which is a whole different comment. I'm going to make moms upset. The reason why we have a baby formula shortage is because there's a dearth of women who are there's too many women working and not breastfeeding. But whatever. I don't want to be like Eric Sammons and say that and then get absolutely.
Don't worry. I got a video on Clown Plant where a doctor actually says there's been an increase by 40% of people interested in learning how to breastfeed or get back into breastfeeding because they didn't plan to. They just wanted to go right into formula. So these are women that didn't have a reason not to do it. They just went right to formula.
On that subject, you see, I think it was Vox and some of these other left, publications have been putting out things why breastfeeding is bad, it's dangerous, it's going to do all these things.
It's white supremacy.
You're going to be worn out. It's going to affect your mental health, and they go through all these things that are ridiculous, frankly. Written, but who knows? With somebody who just did some quick looking around at the Whammons whining in some place or another about it, and wrote it up there. No knowledge of how this actually works. Because they probably murdered all their kids in the home, so they have no clue. And that push has been out there. Doctors that they're, of course, the establishment doctors coming out saying, "Oh yeah, no, you should not try to make your own formula at home. No, and you shouldn't rely on breastfeeding. You should just wait until the government solves the formula problem." And of course, sure enough, Bill Gates is working on beyond formula or whatever, his own special made formula of some sort, right? Yeah. And so they've already got that problem reaction solution, which is what a lot of this is. And really the best thing you can do is when the doctors come out and say, yeah, you don't need to breastfeed, ignore it, do the opposite of whatever they say, frankly. And obviously there's women who can't for whatever reasons. We get that, but you just check out the Weston A. Price Foundation. They have a lot of solutions for making baby formula that are from safe from things that you can source, at least at the moment, fairly easily or stock up on the source. And then otherwise, raw goat's milk. That's been used for put egg yolk in it, mix it up. People have used that for centuries when they couldn't nurse.
I'll use a woman's idea. Cheryl Atkinson, the CBS lady we talked about the FBI, she put a tweet out. What did people do before the FDA approved 4 companies to produce the baby formula? And just like that, with Westinghouse, there's and you see the experts, just like we saw 2 years ago, say, don't do that. You may kill your baby. Delivering fear, because that's the only thing they can do is fear, fear, fear. You must do what the FDA and everyone else that we tell you that's in charge or the authorities, they tell you how to live.
It's the same FDA. It's the same FDA that shut down the Abbott manufacturing plant for recommendations. They're like, oh, yeah, this isn't up to whatever random 21-1 code. You got to shut it down for 4 weeks. It's like, do we have to do it now? Yep, you got to do it right now. And so, like Brian said, there's your problem. They caused it. Now you have people freaking out about it. And yes, obviously there are
proposals for a law enforcement agency, for an intelligence agency. You're not going to submit the proposal that we won the war on terror and everything's great, because the first thing's going to happen is your budget's going to be cut in half. It's my opposite of Jesse Jackson's keep hope alive. This is keep fear alive.
Indeed. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say just what you guys have said, and but the thought of trying to combine all this together and seeing that what's one of the to fill in for Fawaz a little bit, because otherwise I think he'd be on something like this that contradicts logic, is that we've allowed ourselves collectively to fall for this fallacy that we can kind of legislate and even guide our lives based on exceptions. So, for instance, have there been people who have gotten sick by consuming a raw egg, just without any of the caveats I'm sure there has been someone who's gotten sick consuming a raw egg. How many bodybuilders could you find, or folks who are interested in powerlifting, things like that, or other sorts of sports? You got to put on some weight in a hurry, some muscle in a hurry with lots of protein, who down raw eggs by the dozen, sometimes even daily, tons. But we've allowed ourselves to essentially legislate based on exceptions. So you kind of see this with the Roe v. Wade arguments already early on. About what about the exceptions, and then I was hearing one of these ladies going after a conservative legislator from somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but it's just been in the last few weeks or so. Well, if this bill is passed, are you really going to stop even women who have been raped, or if incest? Well, yes, because the baby does not deserve. It's about the baby here. Oh, the CNN clip. Okay, so yeah, and it's there you go. I mean, that allowing ourselves to kind of judge our lives based on these incredibly rare exceptions, or perhaps sadly with the food recommendations, maybe not such rare exceptions once they get our DNA changed through mRNA technology. But it's the ridiculousness of basing our lives on these exceptions. So it's just a philosophical error about how to conduct one's life from the very beginning. You don't govern your life based on exceptions like that.
There was a CNN clip with the interview with the Nebraska governor, I think it's Nebraska, and he answered, "It's still a baby." And then you have the mayor of New York City, saying, they asked him, "Hey, can you kill up the day of the birth?" And he goes, "Yeah, no man should ever tell a woman what to do with her body." Yeah, that's the clip. If you look on Clown Planet, you'll see the CNN clip with Nebraska governor. And then the next one is the mayor of New York City, talking about killing a baby up the day birth because he's doing a protest march.
Well, and that same thing is again another logical error. I'm telling you, as a man, men shouldn't tell other women what to do with their bodies. Are you not going to obey the same logical rules you just proposed for everyone else there? But of course they're not. No, and they don't expect us to pick up on that logical error.
But men can have babies now too, so men can tell women.
Sorry, sucker.
Newsom screwed that up.
Who's the sucker now? But yeah, that's it's absolutely the whole thing with the baby formula and tying it into what is a woman. What it was funny that the future Supreme Court justice couldn't define what a woman is, because in the last couple of weeks we've had very solid definitions of what women can and cannot do, and we've been able to define them.
A friend of mine sent me a link from Amazon about the 54 gender shirts, and it was, look at the bottom. It's available in men or women.
Very strange that that's the only ones that it comes in that regard. But this is absolutely one of the ways that they're getting it set up. We did the shortages here and there during the virus of unspecified origin back in the day. And watch what's going to happen, because gas is going to go up, food's going to go up, everything's going to go up. The next thing the government in their stupidity will do is recommend price caps, price freezing. What comes after price caps? Food stamps, food rationing. And like Ryan and Steve has said, that's all connected to digital IDs, because the central bank digital currency comes right after that when the fiat money actually crashes. Folks, they want the fiat money to crash so they can introduce the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. So all of this is playing there. None of this is by accident. And there's from a macro standpoint, there's nothing you can do. And you could vote for every Republican that you could find, and you could put 450 of them in the House and 100 in the Senate, and none of this is going to stop. Because you got guys like Chip Roy. People send me stuff. Look at what Chip Roy's doing. Chip Roy stood back and let Biden get installed. He was like, "Oh no, the election was fair and equitable and all this other." And now he wants to do this theater. Don't give me that nonsense. I don't want to see these clips from him. He whines about the southern border. You had a chance to do something, buddy, and you didn't. So you have these things stacking up as well. So that is the place we're going. And I think people, It was one thing to talk about it. Oh yeah, the Agenda 21. And now it's happening. I hope you have food. I hope there's still time to get food. There's still time to start gardening. There's still time to do all this stuff. You just can't sit back and say, well, it's too late. It's never too late until it is too late.
Like even on that topic of just being able to, what can we do? I mean, the WHO wants to do that whole plan, take over the world thing with their plan that they're voting on in a month or so. And then you got the globalists also, trying to lower the world's temperature by blotting out the sun. How do you stop that? You don't vote
burns of you.
Yeah, you don't vote that out.
Frog's gay.
That's Clown Planet.
It is something that, but it's not to folks. You have to have joyful perseverance through all of this as Catholics and Christians. You have to have joyful perseverance. We're meant to suffer. This is not the end game. This is not our end goal. So even though it sounds like doom and gloom, we're just giving you an idea to go get food, water, make sure your shelter's taken care of, but don't jump in and don't freak out and don't get sad about it, because that's completely opposite to what we are doing as Catholics and Christians.
Hey, you want a quick laugh?
I know. I want John in first, then you can go.
Well, just about what you said about there is amount of suffering we're going to have to go through. It reminds me of a clip that I saw again just recently by Sir James Goldsmith, brilliant economical mind who had a sort of conversion after becoming a billionaire. And he saw the way, and this addresses what you guys were talking about with the pricing and the cap on pricing, things like that. He said that the aims, he said this way back in the early 90s, mid to early 90s, the aims of the globalist from the beginning was to offshore as much as possible. And of course, mainly to places like China, Indonesia, a lot of other places where slave labor is so common, because they were going to be able to price the average Joe out of the markets by underselling them easily. And then by the time it was going to take 20 or more years, and sure enough, it did, to really, once China was introduced there as an equal trading partner, to really kill off all the mom and pop stores and all the locally owned, kind of medium-sized production industries here in the U.S. and then for food as well. But it's because people said, well, hey, that's 5 cents cheaper. I guess I'll just go with it. Yeah, I don't know the brand. I don't know the people who produce this. Or, okay, so it's $1 cheaper for these eggs here. I have no clue where they come from, rather than going and getting them from my neighbor here who already gives them to me for a steal of the deal. Let's say now, $5 for a dozen eggs. And okay, maybe you can get them for $4 at the store, but do you know your neighbor who's giving you those eggs? And I wish I had followed this more throughout my own life. So I have a big culpa there for which to make amends later on, hopefully in life. But you go and you patronize people who you know and whose work you appreciate, and who you'd like to still have as your neighbors and your folks in your community, even if it's just at least maybe a regional organization that's still somewhat bigger, and you may not know the guy, but at least you know that most of it's done here in state. Those little sacrifices, even financial sacrifices here and now, that I think they do make a dent, and then eventually they at least keep our grasp on certain industries, and especially food here and close by a little bit longer. And it's going to end up buying us some time before they really put the squeeze on, and especially in regard to food. Just spend a little bit extra right now, and who knows, maybe it will save the disaster from happening at least for a little bit longer, because you've bought eggs from your neighbor and spent the money there.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of investing in your local community is vital. And that's a positive. That's a positive, because we've been such a transient society for so long. If you're in a good neighborhood, in a good area, this will give you a chance to really shore up those places before all of this. Is it the guy I read it from on Zero Hedge said all the price caps and all that stuff? He says bank on it for 2024. I don't think the market and everything can make it that far, because right now they're doing everything they can to be like Walmart and Target missed their marks in this last quarter. They're like, oh no, it's fine. It's stuff and magical money things and moving stuff around. They can only make this stuff because once they actually say it's a recession, which is what we've been in, once they actually confirm it, everything's going to go downhill from there in that regard. But we can move on from all that unless anybody has any closing remarks on that. Okay, we're going to it was dead silence, so we're going to move on. Let's talk real quick. Yeah, moving.
works for your people.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot going on in all of that. There's a lot. What about the dog? What happened? How's the dog homophobia?
What did the dog do?
Yeah. Like, don't let Fido get in on all this. Fido, it's bad enough that they're being called, fur babies and
They
stuff.
probably
like
barked at a couple or something like that. And so,
well, that's the kind of dog I want. I want like all those dogs. Then I want to be able to, find them and bark them out. But I wonder if that pilot too in Florida. I wonder if he passed out because of a jibby jabby Joe, which they will never admit, even though there's new reports about things happening all over the place that are unaccounted for and they're not able to explain. Speaking of which, let's try to get to let's go to our next, unless anybody wants to talk about any of those many wonderful things that Steve just showed us. In the montage,
I know Ryan could go on for days on the UFO thing that's going on, but
the UFO thing, it's like great. The UFO thing is like the first time you were able to swear as a kid. It was cool until you heard your parents do it, and you're like, this is stupid now.
Paul Joseph Watson had a great one. He goes, for how many years that was stupid conspiracy, you're an idiot stuff. Now all of a sudden, it's at the pentagram. What's going on? What is the end game on this thing?
Yeah. First of all, UFOs are demons. Let's just make sure that's established there. And secondly, this idea that now they're going to talk about them, and I saw a photo of it. It was like a green triangle. Oh, look, it's a green. It's like that looks like it was from from the old Macintosh, the first generation Macintosh video games. Like this was the advanced technology that they brought. Pong. Yes. They brought us Pong. That's
like
what it
the
was.
Simpsons. The aliens. We have brought this advanced system, and it's just Pong. We did build the spaceship. They're completely unimpressed.
Well, that's once again the Simpsons predicting it, because that's exactly what it looks like at this point. And they're supposed to tell me on a $22 billion F-35, the best you can do is grainy 1996.
That's your HD right there.
That's your HD, right? So it's nothing. But the UFO thing, I really feel bad if you're one of those guys who lives like right outside of Roswell and your whole life was built on all this, and now it's like, next, I guess you got to find a new hobby, because this thing has been completely debunked. And oh well, thanks government. You couldn't let them have that. You just couldn't let them have their hopes and dreams on that one, because the truth.
It'll eventually be a hate crime to say aliens, and then the Roswell Aliens minor league baseball team will have to change their logo to something else because it's too late now.
Yeah, they'll change it to the Whiteys or something like that. So that way, it's something.
Claire Convent in Roswell.
Yeah. So Roswell's actually not. I mean, I like New Mexico, but too bad it's run by Democrats. It's a beautiful state in that regard. But the UFO thing. You can never build yourself up like that and then have the truth revealed, because it's just going to be a disappointment. There's just no way. You're not getting Independence Day when the government reveals what the spaceships are. You're getting Pong.
Right.
So,
but they blocked out the Gates thing when Gates said you're going to get jabs for till the end of time. No one's talking about that. That came out the same week as the pentagram UFO thing.
The FDA approved a third booster for kids between 5 and 11.
Yeah,
nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, even though all the data shows it's bad, it's dangerous, it's causing all these problems. It's fine. We have zero long-term efficacy trials to show that this is even a decent risk mitigation. Nope, it's okay.
But the last thing I'll say is, don't make me want to vote for Trump. If Fauci says he's going to leave if Trump gets reelected, don't make me want to.
What a hot endorsement for
He's
Trump.
He's not going to leave. That's like all the liberals saying they're going to move to Canada if this candidate gets elected. We're going to get off Twitter if Elon takes over, and all this nonsense. It's just not so.
But speaking of Elon, I know Mike from Restoring the Faith Media did a video on this like a week back. As soon as I heard about it last week. Where he started doing the Elon Musk thing. Well, the bots are a lot, so I can't do my original. All right, it's the Cybertruck all over again. It's all these other things. It's one of the hundreds of thousands of things that Elon always does. He is the greatest promoter of himself because he does these things and everybody gets on board and they buy Tesla stuff and they tell him he's a genius. And then 2 weeks later, something happens. Something comes up that's not his fault. And he's like, well, I got to step back. I'm sorry. I can't. Oh, the Cybertruck, the bulletproof glass it's not bulletproof anymore. So we got to revamp the Cybertruck or whatever the case may be. I can't get you enough superchargers because I don't know, whatever. I'm not smart enough to come up with enough superchargers. There's always something. So we'll go again. We'll just go in the order. Steve, the idea that I know you said don't count on Musk saving Twitter. Even if you want to save Twitter, it's still trash. But are you shocked at how quickly Musk has now done his Musk-like thing and said, well, I can't really do anything about this?
To be honest, I wasn't even paying any attention to it. I saw something about I didn't see the video, but I did see a tweet put out about the Musk now not doing it. I'm going, okay, it's like don't care type deal. He wasn't going to change anything anyways. The whole thing was what? The anonymity on the Twitter bots. There was a bunch of fake accounts and people not using their real name. So again, that goes back to you will have to have like a digital ID to get online or something. All of it's connected in some manner. Remember, he's a WEF guy, a young leader fan, so he's in with everything that's going on in Davos. But yeah, I mean, and all this whole thing about free speech. You hear that going on with the Buffalo shooting. We need to regulate free speech. Well, in a sense, yeah, obviously free speech is not, air has no rights. We know this. And if we go with the Americanism idea of, hey, everything we can say is totally free. We can shout from the rooftops, air, heresy. It's totally fine. But then you go, and I know you guys at the Veritas Radio Network talk about this quite often about the incorporation doctrine for my English-speaking people, about the Miracle Amendment that made everything from the ice world of Hoth to the ice gate, was the Stargate, as you guys say, under the Bill of Rights, where that's not true because every state has. You see Hochul talking about we need to go after the First Amendment. New York doesn't have a speech amendment. Every state has a speech amendment. California wanted to ban cussing. Was it 12, 15 years ago? And no one got upset about that that I remember. Imagine that now. How many people would go, "Oh, you're banning cussing"? Wasn't that a good thing? Are you free to go? Are you free to go around saying dropping F-bombs all over the place, blank, all over? No, you got to regulate. You have to regulate speech. Okay, maybe we don't want the state doing it. Okay, we want morals and change of hearts. But again, the state used to, ban contraception. The state used to ban murder of a baby. The state did a lot of good things when it had morals. So it goes back to the state doesn't have morals because the French Revolution switched the church and the state. So the church runs the church obeys the state and everything anymore. And now everybody that has a constitution in the United States of America, obviously not talking about France or Italy and things like that, you each have a free speech amendment. You each have a gun amendment. So when they say we're going to go after the Second Amendment, good luck. That's what Congress shall not pass. Doesn't mean the city of Cowpen, South Carolina shall not do. No, it's Congress, federal government. That's why you got a state after that. So that's why you got localities and regions, which you all should have voted for the last couple of days in your local states, and said the heck with the feds, as Rick brought up before, and Ryan has talked about ad nauseum. If you're voting for the feds, it's basically just spinning your wheels and tire. You're not going anywhere. Give me a reason to vote for a federal government. Anything in the next whenever it's one rig that doesn't do anything. Why bother? Fix your local and state, and then worry about the regulations that come. Hey, we can't do this. Here's our state. Here's our locality. Right? Know your state constitution. Know what your locality amendments, rules and regulations are, and go from there. I know that's an in around of Elon, but I didn't have anything to say about Elon.
No, I mean, well, it really does speak a lot to the fact that everybody's either putting their faith in federal government or in these one-person solutions, whether it's either Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, depending on who you talk to, or it's Elon Musk buying Coca-Cola or Twitter or whatever. Please buy this and save it for me, or whatever random actress says something that you mildly agree with this week. It's Steve, it's a really good point that we do not want to actually, when they talk about democratizing the process, true democracy is on the ground in your town. getting your city council to not be a bunch of out of town California losers, just speaking from personal experience, and trying to get people who are not crazy on your boards. Or, I mean, I'm not a big fan of school boards, but while they exist, getting them on there, or whatever the case may be. So it's not an end around. It's just a further point that we believe too much. Everybody talks about they don't want a king, but yet in every situation we're always like, look, that guy can fix it. It's like, well,
we got to elect the kings. I think Franklin
king.
called that.
You want a king of Twitter, and you want a king of the White House, and you want a king of this and that. And so the ideas of what do you got?
And also, you hear about like people talk about Soros funded this guy or this guy. The bad guys funded this. I guarantee we had people in Virginia trying to fund Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. There's people on our side doing the exact same thing in other states. Stay out of everyone else's state. If you're in Pennsylvania, worry about Pennsylvania. If you don't live in Pennsylvania, stop worrying about Pennsylvania. Worry about if you're in Georgia, fix Georgia. Stop worrying about Pennsylvania. It'll be over my dead body before you ever see me sending money to some representative in the state of Virginia, Pennsylvania, definitely Washington. I don't care how bad Washington gets. You ain't getting a dime. I don't live there.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. That's a good point. They suck so many people into the idea of, well, the Pennsylvania election affects you. Shouldn't affect me one bit. Shouldn't affect me, not at all. Let's get Ryan in on any of these topics, Musk or any of the other things we're talking about.
Well, with Musk is interesting. If anyone watched his Joe Rogan interview, where he famously smoked weed, he's obviously an incredibly intelligent person and an incredibly thoughtful person. But then so people, it creates kind of this cult of personality, and he's I don't know, sort of left-leaning libertarian of some sorts or whatever in terms of his politics, economics, or what have you. But then you look at him, like Steve mentioned, he's a World Economic Forum partner. He's one of the richest. He's in the club. Trust me, he is in the clubs of the people that make things.
You don't get to be that rich by not being in the club.
No, you don't. He shows up to what was it, the Met Gala, wearing what's basically an inverted cassock with white instead of black and a Roman collar, and on the back of it says Novus Ordo Secularum, New World Order. Right. And so this is not your, based conservative savior who's going to come in and fix Twitter for you. He's not going to do that. And he was never going to do that. And all these people, getting up. And I think Mike from Restoring the Faith called that exactly right in terms of the financial stuff in his video on it, where, he just laid out how these types of things work, how that works in the stock market, how, he's going to be able to sell Tesla stocks and make a fortune on it. And then he is easy way out of the Twitter deal. He's going to make billions off just attempting to do this. We're on the flip side, and you got all these people, just like we mentioned, oh, Elon, fix this. Elon, save us. Elon, we need you to get us verified or whatever, kind of nonsense. We can't wait for him to take over. He's not going to take over. And even if he did, right, what's going to happen? Again, free speech. As soon as then he has to saddle with the financial responsibility of Twitter, making it continue to be valuable, and then that's going to have to deal with. He's going to have to play by the App Store rules for Apple and Google, right? And otherwise, you won't be able to get the Twitter app, which is what most people use. So it goes on and on to these things where you're never going to get a scenario where there's going to be no censorship on Twitter. It's just not going to happen. And why do you care? Right. And everything with Twitter is completely out of whack. You got corporations that get terrified and bow to Twitter mobs of people with that just get this thing going, that are on the left, that are all crazy on all these stupid issues. And then they don't buy your products. They're not going to start buying your products. They don't care whether you're talking about film and entertainment or products or whatever, and you see Twitter mobs come after them because of this. They are not going to start buying your products or supporting you, because the people going crazy on Twitter because of Dave Chappelle are not going to stop, to start signing up to Netflix as soon as they get them out of there, or really stop. They're not going to change any of their habits. It's just a rage mob. But it gives a way to kind of isolate like a mob and say, see, you need to do something because of this. Whereas if you just ignored it and pretended it didn't happen, it would pass over. It's not going to affect your sales any. It's not going to affect your profits any. You look at Heaven Hills Distillery. They make Rittenhouse rye, fantastic rye whiskey. And then the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, finished, and I did this too. We toasted a 2-ounce pour of Rittenhouse rye, and that people were making that popular on Twitter and other places. And then the Twitter mob started. Oh, Heaven Hills Distiller, you're not supporting this, are you? You didn't name this after Kyle Rittenhouse, did you? You don't want to be associated with this. And they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to say, yeah, we support him. No, they just had to be quiet. None of these people were going to start drinking that rye. They probably don't have the sophistication to drink real whiskey anyway, but they're not going to start drinking that product just because they come out and make a statement. But they bowed to the mob. They got scared and they came out. Oh, no, we strongly condemn all this stuff. Really? I'm gonna have to find something else to cut in my Sazeracs now. You didn't have to say anything, but you did. And that's what Twitter performs and will continue performing that role. They'll continue censoring all free speech. Or anyway, speech they don't like when it comes down to it. And for all the conservatives, they're like, yeah, Elon, do you really want free speech? I mean, it's kind of a necessary evil in where we live now. But is that a Catholic value that we should be aspiring to? No, it's really just a necessary evil that allows us to still proclaim the faith amidst all the other evil and wickedness in society. But we want truthful speech, just speech, and then where things are debated to arrive at the truth. But you don't get the right to make porn and call that speech. You don't get the right to say whatever thing you want to say about somebody and get away with it, and say, yeah, I got free speech. I could say what I want. That's not what anyone wants, right? You don't have the right to preach heresy. So, really check yourself and say, all right, yeah, I get that we need free speech. And if that allows me to proclaim the gospel, I'll drape myself in the First Amendment in order to preach the gospel. But this is not what we're trying to get to as Catholics, or should be celebrating.
I agree. Free speech absolutism is one of these things that I absolutely can't stand. That phrase and the phrase fiscally conservative but socially liberal, those are the two political phrases that drive me up a wall because both of them are nonsensical and stupid. But John, what do you think of the whole thing from Twitter supposedly being bought? Now he's backing out, and now it's what's going to happen, and oh no, conservatives are going to lose this ground again, which we never really had to begin with in the first place, but it's going to be so terrible.
Well, I think we suggested it strongly, if not declared it to be what it actually was. It seems now in retrospect, the first week when it all came out, that it was a smokescreen for something very likely, and we just didn't know what it was at the time. And maybe we still don't have clear exactly why all this has gone on. You never want to discount completely human action and how should I say that other motivations that went into it. And I think Ryan said it right, that it's clear that out of all the people that are definitely not our friends, Elon, there's a little something more up there than there is for the average one we'd be dealing with. We want to be careful in judging him, too simplistically. But to think that even a smart person wouldn't be affected by enticements to even greater wealth. I mean, any of the billionaires. If you just think about it for a second, that any of the billionaires would keep on doing what they're doing, or trying to amass more wealth in various ways, has got to make you really wonder about their mental and their psychological stability. With that much money, you could go, and as close as you could live some sort of blessed life here on earth by really taking care of your family and those you love, trying to build some sort of, as we say now, intentional community. Live the life that the Greeks and the Romans saw as to be really a truly blessed life, that kind of Georgic or agricultural life, where you do just enough on the farm so that it's pleasant but never too much. So the very fact that someone like Elon is still, behind the scenes doing things like this, should be some sort of red flag for us. And I hate to keep going back to it every time. It seems like maybe I don't have anything better to say, but I think it's still important to note that it's probably some sort of smokescreen for something else that's going on too. But as you guys have already said, he's not really our compatriot. We can appreciate that the left are now spending at least some of their free time attacking one another instead of maybe all of their enemies on the right. So that's fun to watch. But I mean, really, for the serious person, you're really wondering what else is going on here.
Yeah, no, I would be absolutely ecstatic if Elon Musk bought Iceland and let all the Catholics just go there, right? Then they just leave us alone. You know what I mean? That'll be your charitable deed, Elon. You can buy Iceland for us. Which one? Greenland's full of ice and Iceland's green. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Or however, let them buy Iceland. Let us all go move there and live there. We can live out our lives and we can be left alone. And then Elon, that'll be your good deed. We'll all pray for you for your conversion. That's my deal. I'll offer to him. Listening here on News from the Pew, buddy. I'll tell you, we can get you there in that regard. So now we'll move on. I believe to we have two more topics we're going to talk about, and then we'll finish up here. So speaking of popular culture and things of that nature, the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. First of all, you can check out my review on Crusade channel on the Crusade channel blog. Just type in Doctor Strange 2. I thought it was boring. It was a mess of a film, uninspired, and just too much hammy stuff. Secondly, what I came out, I was like, man, there is just no hiding the serious pushing of witchcraft in this. There's demonic symbols everywhere with Elizabeth Olsen's character. There's also the pointless and boring America Chavez lesbian mother scenes, which when I was watching that, I was like, oh man, I wish I was in China right about now, because the Chinese managed to get this sucker edited out, and there's nothing in the actual film that does anyway. And third, that girl looks bored. She's in a $1 billion film, or she's in a multi-million-dollar film. The girl looks like she's waiting in line for pizza at school. It was pretty uninspiring. But I want to talk. I mean, you can talk about the Marvel stuff if you want, but the pushing of the demonic, not only in this show but in stuff, all of the other shows that are being promoted right now. The continual allusions to Satanism and the occult. I mean, even Doctor Strange in these films is being portrayed like a guy named Aleister Crowley, the real life occultist. They're taking a lot of inspiration from that, and in conjunction with Disney releasing their Pride Month for kids, their clothing line for kids for the month of June. So the whole idea here is that they're unleashing everything they got at this point, because they're losing, at least in popular culture. They used 10 years of the MCU to get people on their side, and now they're starting to unleash all this stuff they did with Eternals. They'll do it here, and they'll continue to do it.
And there's some other disturbing trends too, like with the occult symbols classically in Doctor Strange, and you could tell too how they've completely departed from the way it's explained. This is not a sequel to the original Doctor Strange. This is actually a sequel to the Disney Plus TV show WandaVision, really, when you get down to it. And the occult symbols classically were like a metaphor in the comics lore for taking dark energy from the multiverse. Dark energy not meaning evil energy, dark energy meaning your opposite, like your dark matter type of thing, and basically is bringing energy throughout the multiverse to do the things they do. So, which I mean, obviously is just fiction, and it is ludicrous because that's not the way it works in real life. And so a lot of these things, so spells are understood really as calling forth these different things from the from the multiverse and using that energy, rather than being an explicit endorsement of anything demonic per se. Classically in Doctor Strange, and the first movie makes that clear. So it's similar, like in the first Thor movie, where he's explaining to Jane Foster that in his world, magic and science never really diverged. They were always the same thing. In other words, it wasn't real magic. But now they've turned up the gas, so now it's just real magic, and that's where the proliferation of the occult symbols is not done as a metaphor, but now it's really meant to bring a lot of this stuff to the fore. But that's not even, for me, the most troubling thing in the film. And it's more pushing of, there's a complicated ethical nonsense that they're pushing here. And it really comes from, again, if you had to watch the Disney Plus series WandaVision to get it, where she basically enslaves an entire town to live out fantasy of living with Vision, who dies in Infinity War, and has children that didn't actually exist, except in her mind as she tortures all these people. And the show, they cover it up like, well, you sacrificed so much because you lost these children that you didn't have, therefore it's all okay.
Yeah.
What? Wait a minute, no, she enslaved an entire town. I'm sorry, that's not, I mean, in this mind prison, that's not good. So then and that's the first thing. It's always this affirming, because you can only affirm a woman. You can never ever possibly say she did something wrong. That's why a lot of pop culture commentators are calling this the MCU as opposed to the MCU, the way that the first.
That's because you got Thor coming up, where Thor's going to get absolutely.
He's going to get his own movie, as it were. He's going to be a side character in his own movie to find himself for what, the 16th time. He's like 1,500 years old. How has he not found himself? But then, similar thing here. Doctor Strange becomes a side character in his own movie, and the Whammon take over. Yeah. And it's you have Scarlet Witch, and you've got this character America Chavez, who's a failed comic run. It's a comic series that nobody ever particularly liked, and yet they're still pushing it out there. And it's a character that's not popular. So it's like, again, like the magical MacGuffin BS device that's the key to everything, like you see in so many things. She's this magical key to everything to move across the multiverse, right? Even though, well, somehow Wanda Maximoff as Scarlet Witch is sending creatures through the multiverse, that means she should be able to move through the multiverse too. Why does she need America Chavez or her powers? It doesn't make any sense. You're just shoehorning a character in so you could bring in the lesbian parents, really is what he gets down to. But then Wanda does all these horrible things throughout the thing, kills countless people. And then there's just that, it's actually a bit of a metaphor for the murdering of the Marvel franchise. They go to this other alternate universe where they have the Illuminati, which the Illuminati, traditionally was, Black Bolt and Dr. Professor X.
It was Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic,
Iron Man,
Black
Mr.
Bolt,
Fantastic,
Doctor Strange, and Professor X.
And so, and they switch it out, of course, for more Whammons. So you have the Marvel version, the what if Peggy Carter got the serum. So Captain Britain's, Peggy Carter is Captain America-like character, Captain Britain. And then it was total gender swap, because Captain Britain was not a woman. And then you have a different Captain Marvel. It's not even Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, who everyone would love.
It's a more dislikable Captain Marvel than the one that
I don't know if it's hard to be more dislikable than Brie Larson. And the actress just kind of
don't talk about my Queen Bee like that. Don't talk about my Queen Brie like that.
They built up this character though in the films to be this basically so OP they had to get her out of the movie. They didn't know what to do with her. So this invincible woman character smashes through spaceships and whatever in this alternate universe, she's killed by a statue. Come on, really? It's like, but because Wanda is impossible to beat, and even though all those characters, they don't even work together, because of course the actors were not even there. They were all shot separately on their own green screens, and those were digitally put together. They were never in the same room with each other. Then they go kill, Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, the first family of Marvel in terms of comic books. You just kill him right off the bat in a horrible, disgusting way. And it's like, I consider that analogous to the murdering of classic comics altogether when you get down to it. And then Patrick Stewart is, I'm so tired of him because of Picard, and I'm not even going to talk about that here. It's like, but the whole thing, and she commits these horrible crimes, and in the end, they convince her, okay, and she sacrifices herself because nobody can defeat her. There's so many things that Doctor Strange can do. That day in between portals and opening things up, he could put her in a portal to nowhere, like he did to Loki. In the Thor Ragnarok, they could have done so many different things. The way that what they do could have defeated her with no problem, but they make it so she's so OP for no reason, just because she's a woman. So therefore, she can't be beaten. And now we've got diverse Venezuela Chavez or whatever coming in.
Puerto Rican Chavez.
That you can't possibly that is amazing and diverse, and of course, and she's like this constant threat to that's part of the story. And then she's just sitting there in the end, training and Carmitage and all that. So all the really disturbing things are the ethical ones. Wanda's this tragic character. She's got trauma. I'm sorry. Everybody has some kind of trauma coming from somewhere. It's part of the human condition. There's somebody that doesn't like you. There's somebody that beats you up. There's somebody you lose a family member. A bad thing happens to you. Everyone has some level of trauma, and you don't deal with it by doing evil things and everyone say, oh, poor baby, that's okay. But because she's a woman, because a white toxic male, of course, if he has trauma, that's not going to matter. But oh, diverse female sidekick that's now the main character number one. Oh, she's got this tragic thing, these kids that never actually existed. And they copy, I don't know if anyone caught this, they copy a storyline actually from the Netflix reboot of Voltron, where one of the characters is going through multiverses to try to find where she's dead and she can then take her son, and her son rejects her. And they do the exact same thing in this movie. It's like that exact same storyline. It's just everything is just so absurd. The morals are completely twisted and messed up. And then again, it's still projecting the message that only women can be cool. And of course, they got more whammons coming around for superhero characters. And of course, Thor, female Thor was always a failure as a comic. That's a more recent one. But at least that had a story you could get into. Jane Foster as a cancer, patient, but but then getting the power of Thor, right? It was okay as a comic, but this is going to be insufferable. She's going to be better and be able to use the hammer. She's going to science the hammer together and therefore be worthy. And then she's going to be every bit better than Thor ever possibly could have been. And he's just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go off and and we could go on and on about all these things, but it's that message with the MCU, as it were. And they, Kevin Feige production at the end of it, because the guy is trying to shoehorn more diversity, more whammons, more, female superheroes. That you compare that to the way you had in the 80s. You had really cleverly written, strong female characters, and they were distinctly feminine. I mean, just Ripley's character in Aliens, for example, really should be a classic one. She, she's like, I'm not a soldier. I don't need to do this. And she sees the soldiers who are so tough and they got their weapons, they're so confident, getting massacred by these monsters, that she knows something about how to deal with this. And she steps up because the command and control is completely lost. She saves them. She takes direction, but she still lets the corporal Hicks be in charge. And everything she does, you can tell when she's going down into the alien lair at the end to save the girl, she is scared out of her wits. Sigourney Weaver played that role perfectly. She's still a woman doing what, because women often will step up where the men are lacking, but but they still do it in a feminine way. And so we've been there before with strong women, but it was done well. Now it's not being done well because it's more the erasure of actual femininity, just like with the trans stuff, just like with everything out there. I don't know what a woman is or a man is. It's a question for a biologist. You're erasing womanhood. You are erasing everything about what it means to be female in the modern context. And the superhero movies are doing the same thing because they're trying to make women like men and men like women. You can't have any strong men, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the course that it's taking and the culture, and that's what they want projected. And that ultimately, conservatives have mostly abandoned pop culture and say, nah, I don't need to pay attention to that. This is how people see reality. It's why I pay so much time and attention into it. This is ultimately how they think reality is. As a survey of Americans think that like 40% of Americans are black and 50% are gay or trans or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So let's see here. Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there.
I ranted so long. I didn't realize we lost Jonathan.
That's all right. John had to run, but that's we'll catch up with him next week. And I don't have anything else to say about most of that stuff because it really is. That's why people give me crap all the time for why do you review the movies, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, somebody's got to stay on the watchtower, man. Somebody's got to stay on the watchtower and see what they're actually doing so I can tell you, hey, this is what your kids or your kid's friends or whatever may be seeing and trying to talk to your kid about if all that is in that regard. I know Steve doesn't care about any of that because well, no, I get it. If I honestly, after watching the last Doctor Strange movie, Steve, I was like, I don't even care if I review movies anymore because all this stuff is just kind of crap. I mean,
Endgame was kind of my natural break from all this stuff, and then I ended up seeing Spider-Man: No Way Home, and as I'm seeing more, is like, I'm curious about what if there's any, because predictive programming is a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Media is the message, and we know what the message is, as I just ranted about, and so that, all right, well, we need to kind of, in my opinion, not everybody needs to do it. If it's going to disturb you and your spirituality, and you have no interest in watching pop culture, films, sci-fi, whatever, that's fine. Nobody says you have to, right? But then you have other people who go in this purity spiral, and they act like, well, you're doing anything but reading books by saints and watching saint movies, and you're going to go to hell, and that's not true either. Right, you got to have your priorities, and human beings have made stories since they drew caves on the wall. Since you had reciting the Iliad and the Odyssey, for hours and hours by the campfire, and back 3,000 years ago or something like that. And the humans tell stories, and the modern genre of film is another way to tell stories, and that is the Athens of the New World. And it has a beat, just like you want to find out the decay of the Athenian democracy and later the Athenian Empire. You just read their literature, read their plays, read their drama and their poetry, and see kind of where things are going, and that sets that mood. And Thucydides talks about this in the the Peloponnesian War, and in his commentaries there. Roman culture, you look at the decadence of Roman culture is really seen through the decadence of paganism. You see it through the art. And guess who quotes this stuff? Guess who's, some of the stuff would have been lost forever, except church fathers quoted it because they read the pagan classics. But as I believe it's Basil, unless I'm mistaken, or maybe it's Gregory of Nyssa, but they said that first we're formed in the scripture and in the martyrs, and then we read the pagan classics. And that was in a lot of church fathers too, as bishops. They would teach in the schools on Aristophanes, who makes very lurid and colorful jokes about homosexuality, mostly to mock it. But and they read with his for some of his very abusive words relating to homosexual acts. The saints that you pray to and the icons on the wall, they read this stuff, because they had their beat on the pop culture. So it's one thing you say, well, that's not for me. I just don't have a time or interest in that sort of thing. Whatever. Who cares? But it doesn't mean nobody can do it.
No, I agree. That's why I still do it. So, which why my review of Maverick will be coming out next Friday as I watch Top Gun Maverick. So I'm kind of actually secretly anticipating that one.
I'm actually excited for that too, because I've heard from people that are close to either they have connections in the industry. This one's going to be pretty good, and so that will be, maybe it's because Tom Cruise has a certain amount of pull where he's not going to allow himself to be the sidekick in some movie to some better flying whammon or whatever.
He's already the shortest guy there. There's no way he's going to get sidelined. So there's not that. All right, so we're going to wrap up because we lost John, and I know Steve has got to leave his safe room in a couple of minutes to go get moved to another safe room. So, Steve, if you want to drop your saint and your cry room, that'd be awesome. Unless you want to add anything from our Marvel rant, we'd love to hear that too.
I think you're muted.
He is muted. You're.
I remember Ryan and I talking about this months ago about and it was actually Jason Whitlock that brought it out to the open on Black Panther, how much we loved it. And he goes, if you watch that movie, it was all women led. He was the main character. Yeah, but he had to get permission from his mom. He had to do this with his sister. He needed all the women they were the army basically. But yeah, you see it. And like, I agree with that. What Ryan just said about Maverick. Yeah. Cruz ain't going to let that happen to him, but all these other ones, you see, like these guys talk about the guy. Was it? You shouldn't watch the channel. I think it was the drunken movie critic or something like that.
Critical drinker.
Critical drinker.
And he was talking about like that one movie. Just half of the stuff. He's like, well, if this is great if you just suspend, I don't know, reality, common sense, and just laws of physics, all. And then he goes, what is this? So you got this one little 120 pound woman beating 5 guys and actually kicking them up in the air. There's no realm of possibility that ever happens. But
I'm 220. There's no way Scarlet Witch, even with Black Widow, even with a running head start, is getting me off my feet.
Yeah. But you mentioned about
unless you're a compliant stuntman.
Yeah, and very compliant stuntman. But you're right.
Well, you could put the Satanism thing that's going in with the movies into regular life, because those guys are leading the charge, basically not leading, but they're pushing big time on the pro-death movement. And they're saying how much that you read their 7 tenets, and they're really adamant on freedom of religion, freedom of speech, all this stuff. And we're not a religion, but they're pushing everything out in the open, getting it in your face, which if I ever ask anybody ever come up to me and say, hey, can you sign this petition on freedom of religion ever again, going, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And that's a Catholic church. I remember a Knights of Columbus guy doing that 5 years ago. Say, will you sign this for freedom of religion? No, they don't deserve. If you agree in freedom of religion in the USA standpoint, you have to accept the Satanic Church as an official religion. But
that's how in Texas they're going to go backdoor on the abortions. Because the Satanic Temple here in Texas is going to sue to say that abortion is part of their rituals. and to deny them the ability to have abortions is a violation of, as Steve said, their religious practices. So freedom of speech, much like what Ryan was talking about, free, and you were talking about, Steve, free speech absolutist, it sounds great in theory, just like democracy, but in actual practice, it's nothing, but it's just a backdoor for more evil intentions.
Exactly. So my saint will be Blake Masters, who, if you don't know who that guy is, he's running for Arizona Senate. I know earlier I said not to pick for anybody that's running for different states. I'm not giving the guy any money. I'm just saying he's actually calling for the pullback of contraception. So he wants to get rid of what is it, Griswold, Connecticut.
Yeah, I believe it's Griswold that does that.
Yeah, Griswold v. Connecticut, 1967, I believe.
Yep. So who does that? I mean, he's literally calling for let's go all the way out for pro-life.
Oh, I love it when they're going to come for your port. I'm like, I hope we do.
Go for it. It used to be banned in California before Clinton came in.
Yeah. Anyway,
he made that incorporated free speech. My crime room. Where's he? He's coming up here in a second.
Contrast. Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, of Ukraine. Iraq. Anyway.
75. Yeah, but Trump 77, he doesn't sound like that. What are you talking about, buddy? But hey, man, that's, you know what? That's just, I don't mean to cut you off. That you can see the weight of that decision on that man's soul right there about the slip. That's what I'll say. I mean, you can't be responsible for something like that and not have it weigh on you constantly in that regard.
Exactly. And then you see all the photos of him, Obama, and Clinton all are locked arms. And yeah, you think they're on different teams. They're on the same team and you ain't on it.
That's right. Yeah. Big club and you ain't in it. So if excellent, Ryan, Saint of the Week, Cry Room.
Okay, my Saint of the Week. I got to share this. This is just because it's hilarious. Okay. So, it's this guy.
Push-up guy.
Yeah. So I got a nice recovery. It's just amusing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's pride, baby. You take the fall. I don't have to do that. Trying to impress some Jim. No, take the fall.
I mean, it's like half and half. It's like on the one hand, it's like, hey, kudos for recovering from the fall, but on the other hand, serves you right for trying to impress the chick.
Yeah, who doesn't even know you exist.
Yeah, no, she wouldn't even notice otherwise. So, but so I don't know if that's like a half and half, but really, I think how do was going to talk about it? I can't. Oh yeah, so I'm going to put Pope Francis in the cry room because it's we get this mantra: trads, traditional Catholics are like 0.001% of the church. They don't matter. And then every 5 seconds whining about trads, demeaning our spirituality, demeaning us personally, even though he doesn't know anything about us. He doesn't know anything about really a traditional devotion spirituality. I mean, the way he talks about it, clearly he has no clue what's really going on. He just kind of makes these statements. Oh, it's just rote recitation with no joy. It's like I don't know about you, but I have quite a bit of joy at mass, and so even at a low mass where I don't say a word, and I'm more mentally present there than I am at a Novosoro parish watching some 300-pound woman in a leotard trying to do liturgical dance. So
it's interpretive dance, sir. Right. Interpretive lyric.
Interpretive dance.
All right.
In trouble for that, but that's not a fat shame. Just don't get.
That's gonna turn. You're gonna turn into new me you. You're gonna turn into new me you from Sports Illustrated, the 250-pound swimsuit model.
She actually didn't look that bad, honestly.
She's 200. Dude,
compared to what's out there as obese, she's I mean, she's at least got shape, and she's pretty enough. She
Yeah,
look a lot better
round.
if you put a flattering dress. So I don't know. She's not as bad as the other ones they're putting out there. So
yeah, she's not bad as Lizzo. I'll say that much. Lizzo,
yeah, exactly. That's kind of part of what I had in mind. Actually.
She's
I
Ursula.
mean, she's not attractive either. But actually, I think she'd be somewhat more attractive if she had a really flattering dress and maybe a nice broad brimmed hat on.
Where she lost 100 pounds, one or the other.
So,
I mean,
it wouldn't hurt because there's too much there, but it's not so much. I don't know. There's like a balance in a lot of these things, and I see women.
Yeah, her balance is to put down the fork, man.
There's
Whitlock. You got to put down that.
Is this
there's also the fat. Besides the fat shaming, then there's the girls
Yes,
that are like they're trying to lose as much weight as they possibly can to look like these skin and bones Hollywood models, and they actually look perfectly fine. But they're all freaked out. Oh no, I'm fat. And it's like, you are not fat. Oh, but that's not fat. And you just look at sculptures of women, from ancient times, and what they considered goddess level attractive are women with shapely bodies. Women were not skin and bones and would fall apart if the wind hit them. So it's like, so on the one hand, it's like, yeah, you got it. You need to do a certain amount of fat shaming with charity, but it's just not in a horribly demeaning way. But we can't be promoting that as healthy. And at the same time, but we shouldn't be, attacking women that are, mildly shapely, maybe, a little over, but not that much. And I mean, this gal could certainly lose a few more, but she was nothing compared to the other examples they put out there of women and say, oh, this is beautiful. I'm like, no.
Any bit of obesity is not being promoted as the popular narrative is something that can't be accepted in that regard. I understand where you're coming from, Ryan, but I just can't, man, because as a fat man myself, I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm healthy. I am not healthy. I
could
and
very
the
well
qualification of it is just, for me, it's just not that. For my saint of the week, I'm giving a shout out to a guy on Instagram. It's rosaries_by_Alex. And he made this one for me. It is an official The Armed Catholic, the only one you'll ever get because the way it's made. You get this 4-inch crucifix here from Italy. He'll never be able to get. He said again, got my miraculous medals. I was able to pick out Saint Hubert, Saint Joseph, Saint Benedict medal, and Saint Michael. This is the coolest part. These are 45s. They're not real. They're just ordered. 45 shells and then gunmetal beads. So if you want to check them out on Instagram, rosaries_by_Alex. If you follow me, I put the picture of this up and I tagged him, The Armed Catholic. You can go and you don't even have to follow me. Just if you're interested, he custom makes every single rosary to order. He's a really good dude. This is his vocation. Support him. And gotta support guys and gals that do that. I mean, yeah, you can get him for rosaries, stuff like that, but that's just him. Small operation, and he's a really good dude to work with. So check him out. My cry room, I'm gonna go pop culture. I'm gonna throw Amber Heard in the cry room because she's a disgusting, awful, terrible human being. And I mean, Johnny Depp's not much better, but she's awful. I mean, if you know what she's done, and I don't have to explain it. But Amber Heard, she gets in the cry room this week because she is just when you think of the privileged elite, that's her. So I put her in the cry room for this week. And that's it for us here on News from the Pew. I want to thank you all for hanging out with us. For Ryan from Mediatrix Press, from Steve from Census Fidelium, for our man John who jumped in and out. For Fawaz, keep Fawaz in his prayers because he's baptizing his newest baby. And for me, Rick Barrett at The Armed Catholic, thearmedcatholic.com. I want to thank you all for hanging out with us. God bless and Viva Cristo Rey.